All righty, Stephanie is going to do her story. I think you have about a year of abstinence, and thanks. It's all you. Oh,
Thank you. My name is Stephany. I'm a compulsive overeater, and I wanted to start with everyone in this room to hold their heart so we can connect through our heart centers. And I'm praying to my higher power that my story will serve you on your path of recovery. And although I can't see everyone, I know we are all connected here through our higher power and the power of love. So with that, I pray that everyone keeps coming back and continues on their recovery journey together. So with that, I will start. My earliest memories of not feeling great in my skin started around the age of 8, and I remember moving to a new school and thinking this boy I had a crush on didn't like me because I wasn't thin enough, and that's such a strong memory in my head. And I thought that like something was wrong with me for a lot of my childhood. Like, why am I overweight? And I remember going to a nutritionist because I was almost obese as a child, and the nutritionist said, like, put some carrots in the sandwich instead of eating chips. And I was just thinking, this woman is insane. Why would I rather eat carrots over chips? I couldn't understand at that young age that food was having an effect on my body. I just didn't understand why my body wasn't the right shape. So this continued in high school. I joined a track team my freshman year, and basically restricted to borderline anorexic, and I got very skinny, and people who were family friends were commenting to my parents, like, is she eating? And I thought that I still was heavy at the time, and I was just trying to look beautiful. But I was never satisfied with whatever weight I would be, if I was high, if I was low. And there was just this theme throughout high school, university, and even after, that I was just oscillating constantly between like a little bit too thin to like too overweight, and I could never find a balance. And my freshman year of university, I was so scared of freshman 15 that I joined the rowing team, and I woke up every morning at 4:30 a.m., exercised for 2 hours, and the whole time when I was exercising, I was dreaming about my breakfast at the dining hall, where I would overeat and tell myself it's justified. I just worked out for 2 hours, and instead of freshman 15, I had freshman 30. So that did not work out in my favor. And I was really proud that I was part of the rowing team. And there was one time I was telling people I could eat 7 plates of food in the dining hall, like, look at me. And I look back at pictures and I was like, why would I be proud of that? So rowing was an excuse for me to eat. Always buried my emotions, my feelings, my everything into food. I moved to China a year after graduating, and I stopped caring what I look like because I'm around a bunch of people who were not judging me. And I started gaining weight, and I thought, okay, well, it's okay because no one's judging me, but I was judging myself the whole time. I was just justifying that it's okay because there's no one to go off of. And so in China, I stopped trying to stay low, and I ended up gaining a lot of weight. And I got fed up. I came home for the spring Chinese New Year on February 2019. I have a family member who's in the 12-step program, and he always talks about how great 12-step is. And I was like, you know what? I have a problem with food. It's just not working for me. And I surrendered to that. I went to my first OA meeting in my hometown near San Francisco, and I was in a room where everyone was like, I'm a compulsive overeater. And I was like, that sounds weird. I don't know what that means. And it was really hard for me to admit at that moment that I was a compulsive overeater, but I just wanted to find a solution. And I saw that these women it was in a special program called HOW, where they say how much weight they lost. And they all lost tons of weight and seemed really on top of their lives and on the spiritual path. And I was like, I want this. I found a sponsor right away, and I joined this HOW program, went back to China, was calling my sponsor every night for 15 minutes before I went to bed, telling her about the day and doing the step works. When I joined this program, I finally learned that I was a compulsive overeater. I didn't know it originally, but I was in a set program where it told me exactly how to eat, to measure like my breakfast, lunch, dinner, how many vegetables, how much protein, no snacking. That was a very big deal. And I just surrendered to the program. I stopped craving food. I didn't crave sugar at all. I was eating so much vegetables. I felt really like great. Like my energy was higher than it's ever been. And I was like, why did I have sugar and flour in my diet before? So my original abstinence, and it still basically stays besides the flour, is no sugar, no flour. And I just realized like I wasn't restricting myself. I felt free and I felt so much better. So that really changed my life, and also like having more grounding periods of like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I went through the first 3 steps over a few months. Weight came off as a side effect, and I hit my healthy weight in last April, and I'm very grateful that I've stayed that exact same weight or oscillate like 1 or 2 pounds. But I just know that OA finally stopped me from going to extremes up and down. It brought me back to like a very normal place where I no longer obsess about food or my body. I have memories of me constantly looking in the mirror and pinching my fat angrily and being like, why is this here? And binging about the fat that was there, and it just didn't make any sense. I couldn't connect the two, and the whole time I was eating my emotions. And when I joined How Away, it was like, that wasn't an option. And I had a situation, my first time I realized like, this is a time I would have medicated with food, because I never knew I was medicating with food. Was I just joined How Away. It was like the first week back in China, and I was stressed about a contract for the house and the rent, and I was like, this is not going to be solvable. And it just exploded in my mind. I'm like, I wanted flour, but I was like, I can't do flour. So I just went to the gym and ran miles, and I just realized like, wow, I used to try to calm myself down, like sedate myself with flour, and it was just such, like, I realized at the moment when I stopped numbing that I'm definitely a compulsive overeater. I was compulsively eating to numb myself, numb my emotions and my feelings. So I went through the first 3 steps with this sponsor. She personally did not believe in a God, and her higher power was the fellowship. And I spent those 3 months kind of debating, like, is there a God? I'm not sure. I just want to have a stable life and not be eating all the time. I just wasn't really mentally in like the whole spiritual path of 12 steps. I was more in like, finally I have structure. And once I hit my healthy weight, I started resenting how structured it was. And I was always doing these online OA meetings in China. So it works out now in the quarantine because I'm used to online meetings. And I was doing these online meetings, and I just realized like, I really want to be in the normal OA program where they're not telling me how to eat, and I can just kind of figure it out. So I left How Away. I found my sponsor, who's here today, and I always noticed her shares in this room, and I really loved that she had her own approach to OA, where she was saying that she emailed her food the day after. And I was like, that would be great, because for me, like, the honesty was so important, and I'm a spontaneous person, and it's really hard for me to predict what I'm going to eat for dinner exactly. And I just wanted more flexibility after being in a structured program. And she also brought in, like, I talk about 5 things I love about myself. And I'm like, I need some more self-love, because I was really grin and bear-ing the program for 3 months. And I always saw like that she was just blooming with like her connection to her higher power, and when she talks you just feel like there's a channel straight from her higher power coming through her, and I was called to it. So I reached out. I was not expecting her to take me as a sponsee. I felt like I was a terrible sponsee. I actually didn't want to continue the program after leaving How Away, and that's the theme that I want to bring to tonight, is this concept of keep coming back, because every time I wanted to quit, I just kept hearing keep coming back. And when I found my sponsor here, I just kept hearing it for multiple times. I was like, I don't need OA. And then I just kept hearing this voice like, keep coming back, keep coming back. So I really appreciated how flexible my new sponsor was, and it was really hard for me to transition from like a very structured eating program to figuring out what works for me. But I knew what works best for me is to have 3 very grounding meals a day, and my life just started becoming a lot more spiritual. With the OA program, that was not telling me how to eat, because I was like, wow, I'm choosing what I want to eat, and every meal I pray before I eat, I pray after I eat. I don't see food as a tool to hurt myself. Like, I will never hurt myself. Every day I live, every day I'm not recovered. I'm always recovering, but I know that food is a blessing, and it's not something that I want to attack my body with anymore. And if I'm dealing with uncomfortable feelings in my life, I share it with my sponsor right away. I do step work, I call someone, I go on a run. I just like, the food is not going to solve that problem. I have to find my tools. And that's where OA has been such a blessing for me, because I really learned how to not react to life, but respond to it. And I was having a hard time also when I first switched to my new sponsor, because I didn't really do, like, my first 3 steps were more about like, how do I lose weight? And it wasn't so much about how do I start my spiritual path. So when I came to my new sponsor, every time I bring things up, she's like, what about the 3rd step? What about the 3rd step? Did you turn it over to your higher power? Are you willing to turn it over to your higher power? And I was like, I don't really know what higher power is willing to take what I have to turn over. Like, there was just such a disconnection. And the more she brought up turn it over, I was like, I don't understand how to turn something over. And it wasn't until I went through a really difficult situation in my life last September, and I think that for me was my rock bottom. And it was like after I already started the program, and it wasn't a rock bottom with food, it was more a rock bottom of just emotions. And I started reading a book that's a 12-step book called Surrendered. And this book opened my eyes, and it taught me like, oh, it's not about like, I have to turn over and surrender. It's like, I am surrendered. I'm surrendered to reality. If I fight reality, it causes more problems. But when I accept it and I say, okay, this is life. This is life on life's terms. I was able to find a lot more peace and acceptance and not running away. And like, that process of acceptance and peace has taught me how to really get closer to my higher power. And I'm so grateful for hard times now, where before I would sit in self-pity. And I've learned from my sponsor that self-pity is avoiding growth and learning. And like, for me, that's so important. I also learned from my new sponsor to not hold on to guilt, because guilt is such a toxic emotion. And that's what really has driven me to continue to spiral downwards in myself, and to also go into the food or try to numb in some other way. And it's like, that's not productive for anyone. It's not productive for me. It's not productive for the world. So I've really learned how to sit in the solution, or the answer, the solution, which is a 12-step program, and not sit in the problem. Let's see. Okay, so I wrote down some things. So the biggest blessing also that I've learned from this program is to focus on progress, not perfection. I always thought that I had to be perfect in some form, and this program has taught me that perfection is my disease. And disease, I love this kind of reminder, means to be dis-ease, like to feel dis-ease. And when I'm trying to be perfect, I'm really at dis-ease, and there's some concept in the future I can be perfect. And now I just realize, like, it's all about continuing to work on my spiritual journey through the 12 steps, and through reaching out to people, and it not being about Stephany all the time. And it's about reaching out to someone who needs help, reaching out, I don't know, just getting out of my own self. Like, that's what I really learned. And that concept of ism, like alcoholism, whatever, is like I, self, and me, and that's my disease. And when I'm going towards progress, it's not about me, it's going towards my higher power. And I'm finally on a program, a spiritual journey, where I know how to, I have a direction and I have support with people around me, with my sponsor. I also want to say that my sponsee is in this room, and I'm so grateful in OA that we don't have to finish all 12 steps before we get a sponsee, and we can pick up a sponsee wherever we're at in the program and they cannot surpass us. And she's been such a huge part of my journey, seeing her growing in the past few months that we've been communicating. And I just realized like OA really works magic and miracles in people's lives, and that transformation that happens when you surrender to your higher power and you stop fighting reality and you trust that the 12 steps work, and you surrender and you email your food every day. You're just constantly like in this place of like, I'm open, I'm willing, and seeing that willingness. And I had multiple people who said they would be my sponsee and they would drop off, and then my sponsee is so willing, and I've just been in shock and like how much growth, and like that has fueled my journey of growth. So I'm so grateful for that. And I realized like having a sandwich of like my sponsor and sponsee just constantly keeps me going on this journey. So with that, I wanted to share what I'm doing now that's working for me. And so I'll just go through like a day in my life. I have been waking up many days in the sunrise and drinking tea and meditating in the morning. I spend an hour every morning doing a morning ritual, praying. I pray for all the people I love in my life. I pray for all the compulsive overeaters to find recovery. I connect to my body. I connect to myself, my higher power, my hopes, my dreams. And through that process, like my whole day feels a lot more set. I have a lot more balance in myself. I exercise every day for at least an hour, and that's been huge for me to have that exercise component in my recovery. I eat 3 clean meals a day. I don't measure anymore. It doesn't work for me mentally. It does for some people, but I have approximations of how much protein and vegetables after working the How Away program for 3 months. So I try to stick to that kind of measurement with my eyes. I don't have a rule about no snacking, but I usually don't snack because it just makes me more excited for my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But if I do snack, it will be very small and very conscious, and I just realized snacking is where everything goes downhill for me, so I really try to not snack unless if I'm really hungry. I don't eat sugar. I'm abstinent on sugar, especially recreational sugar. I've definitely had the experience of like alcoholic foods become repulsive, and if I see recreational sugar, I don't want it. And I do know like with my disease, if I'm stressed or tired or hungry, angry, lonely, tired, halt, I'm sure it would be more appealing. But I've just created a life where every day I feel like pretty good on my hungry, angry, lonely, tired because I'm working the steps. So it's not often that I'm in those places. I really have surrounded myself with positive influences in my life. I have so much love in my life, and I've just really learned that I'm not perfect, but I can keep building healthy patterns and habits in my life and continuing to work the steps and continuing to come back to meetings and continuing to talk to people. I have multiple people in this room that I've inspired just by sharing with them about my experience in OA, and they've joined OA, so that's been really powerful to share that message. And I also feel like the newcomer should be really welcome. And so I know I only have a minute left, but my theme today is that I want to talk about keep coming back. So like, if you're a newcomer, please share why you are here and how willing are you to recover and your willingness to keep coming back. And also like people who've been in this program, what kept them coming back when they wanted to leave. And I also really love this quote. My sister said it to me, and I'm going to just share the art card. It says, add life to your years and years to your life. And then to add it, it's because you're worth it. But I really believe, like, as people who are compulsive overeaters, like, we're worth coming back. And I love how we end meetings, but we're worth taking care of ourselves. We're worth coming back to each meeting. We're worth taking care of our body to feel good, to bring goodness into the world. And I just really want to thank everyone who's here and listened to my story. And I'm so excited to hear the shares about keep coming back. So with that, I will pass. And thank you, Rick, for giving me this opportunity to share my story. It's really special for me. Thank you.
Stephany, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. That we appreciate you sharing. And of course, we're now ready for